Good morning, Walled Lake Campus. Thanks for letting me come to you in this format with God's Word for us today. This month, we're sharing a series of messages that have to do with the end. You have submitted a number of questions regarding the end of life and end of the world, and we're in a series of messages where we're kind of unpacking what God has to say about that. So a couple of weeks ago, we shared a message about the end of life and what happens afterward for a Christian. Last week, we shared a message about the signs of the end, including the so-called signs of rapture and millennium. By the way, if you miss any of these messages, you can always listen to them online through our podcast at st-matthew.org. Today, we're going to continue this kind of a series by answering these questions that one of you wrote into us regarding. Is each person's judgment day the day they die, or is there one big judgment day when Jesus returns? If there is one big judgment day, where are the dead while they are waiting? Well, let's take a look at what God reveals about this in the Bible for us today, okay? Now, to introduce it, let me ask, have you ever been through a hiring process? Perhaps it was your first job shoveling snow, mowing the lawn, babysitting, or maybe it was your first job out of high school or college, or a job interview that you had after that. Well, I want to tell you that when it comes to calling a pastor, it's a whole different process. And one of the differences about a calling of a pastor process is that it has both a private and a public component to it. As an example, for about the last 6 months, we've had a call committee that has been taking a look at a list of candidates that have been received from our denomination, taking a look at reference checks and phone interviews and all of their sources of information to determine qualified candidates to present to you as a congregation. Now, what they've been doing has been a private discernment process. Now, next weekend, at 12:30 at our Wixom campus, we're going to have a congregational assembly meeting where there will be a public part of the process in which the congregation will prayerfully discern if a qualified candidate should receive a divine call or not. There is a private part of the process and there is a public part of the process. Similarly, when it comes to the question of our being judged by God, there is a public part of the process, but there's also a private part of the process for those who die before Jesus returns. Let's unpack that. Let's explain that just a little bit. The Bible makes it clear that when a person dies, there is a separation between one's body and the soul. The book of Ecclesiastes says it this way: the body returns to the dust of the earth, and the spirit returns to the God who gave it. The dead body decays, while the spirit of a person, minus their earthly body, meets its maker. And it is at that moment when somebody meets their maker upon death that there is a private judgment thing that happens. Here's how the book of Hebrews in our Bible reading today says it. Just as people are destined to die once and after that to face judgment, so Christ was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many. And he'll appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation to those who are waiting for him. The contemporary English version translates it this way: we die only once, and then we are judged. For those who die prior to Jesus' return, there is a private judgment that occurs at the time of death. We'll give you an example of this. Remember when Jesus was dying on the cross, there was a man dying on the cross next to him who had come to faith through the words that had been spoken, ridicules even of Jesus. The power of the Spirit was at work. And when he said, "Lord, remember me in your kingdom," Jesus said to a man who was just about to die, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Now his body was going to die and be buried, but his spirit would be in paradise. There was going to be a private judgment whereby, this guy had faith. He's going to heaven. Okay, well, on what basis then is this verdict or this judgment of this private judgment made? It's made on the basis of a person's belief or rejection of Jesus and what he did. Remember our Hebrews Bible verse said, Christ was sacrificed once for all to take away the sins of many. Or as Jesus put it at the end of his crucifixion, it is finished. He had paid in full the hell punishment for every sin of every human being ever. No more sacrifices were needed. Those who wait in faith for him receive the eternal heavenly aspect of salvation the moment they die. Jesus said it elsewhere this way, whoever believes in the Son has eternal life, but whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for God's wrath remains on him. So to summarize this private part of judgment, if you will, the person who dies prior to Jesus' return, the dead body decays, while Jesus immediately and privately judges whether that person goes to heaven or hell. And that judgment is made based on whether someone believes in or rejects Jesus and what he has done for them. That's the private judgment at death for those who die prior to the time of Jesus' return. But there is also a public judgment, a universal judgment of all human beings. And let me explain that. This last week, we had the privilege of watching a couple of our grandkids for several days. The other grandchild went with Mom and Dad down to Florida on Dad's business trip. Now, as you know, on Monday, our area here in Michigan was hit by 9+ inches of snow. When that information got to that grandchild who was down in Florida, guess what his response was? Not fair. His siblings had a chance to be sledding and having fun in the snow. All he had to do was sit by the beach in Florida in his shorts. I don't get it totally, but not fair. Now, here's the reason why I tell you that incident. Anyone who knows you or knows me well knows that we have made our share of mistakes. Let's be blunt about it. We are sinners who have done wrong badly and often in God's eyes. And anyone who knows us well knows that we have made these failures. We have fallen against God's plan for our lives. We've sinned. Now, any of them who might be ending up in hell could say, wait a minute, why are you going to heaven because you believe in Jesus? I've seen how much you sin. You're just as bad as I am. And thereby, they could be calling into question the judgment of Jesus, as if he was unfair. Well, Jesus is going to see to it that no one has adequate reason to say unfair, because he's going to have, when he returns, a public, universal judgment scene where he shows the reason why you're in heaven and why others are in hell. Here is how Jesus describes it. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne before him, and he'll separate the people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Jesus is talking about a coming. Now, he came once as a quiet little baby born and placed in a manger. When he comes the second time, there's going to be nothing quiet about it. All the world is going to know he has arrived in all of his glory. He's going to sit upon the throne of judgment, and all of the universe, all of human beings of all nations of all time will gather before him. This is going to be a public, universal judgment scene. As the Apostle Peter once put it, Jesus commanded us to preach to the people and to testify that he's the one whom God appointed as judge of the living and the dead. This is why this kind of teaching of the apostles was put together in something we profess called the Apostles' Creed, which Christians over the course of the centuries have professed. You know these words, that Jesus was crucified, died, and was buried. The third day he was raised from the dead. He ascended into heaven and sits at the right hand of God the Father. And from thence he will come to judge the living and the dead. All people, of all nations, of all time. At this last judgment, at Jesus' return, the sentence that had been privately pronounced upon those who had died before Jesus' return will be publicly confirmed, along with that sentence being acted out also with the resurrected bodies at that time. Jesus' just judgment will be evident to all people in such a way that nobody could rightly say it's unfair. And as evidence, God will show, if you will, a video of your life. You say, what? Well, yeah, kind of like a video of your life. You're saying, oh no, oh, hang on. It's an edited video. Because of Jesus, as far as the east is from the west, so far has God removed your transgressions from you. So the video of your life is edited. All of the things that we have done wrong, how often we have sinned bad, and it's all been removed. The only thing left in the video is the evidence, the actions that are evidence of the faith that we have in Jesus. Now, the video part is kind of a contemporary way of saying it. Here's how Jesus put it. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." And the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you in need and help you?" And the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." On Judgment Day, followers of Jesus will be publicly vindicated. Their good deeds to despised the rejected fellow Christians in this world. Remember, that's how the world treats those who are followers of Jesus. Oh, those right-wing fanatics, ignore them, forget them, make fun of them. Those despised, rejected Christians and brothers and sisters in the faith who in faith you acted in kindness toward them. It will be treated as, well, it'll be an evidence of your faith in Jesus that moved you to care for your brothers and sisters in the faith. And that public evidence, that visible evidence of your invisible faith will be on display for all of the universe so that Jesus will be proved right in his judgment that you get to go to heaven. Not because of anything you did, but because of the faith that God put in you and the way that it transformed you to love your brothers and sisters in the faith. And for all those who have rejected Jesus, who don't have that faith-inspired evidence, that too will be shown as evidence for why they are not going to heaven. Now, to summarize this then, there will be a private judgment, yes, for those who die before Jesus' return. But at the public universal judgment of all humanity ever, Jesus will there publicly demonstrate the faith, the invisible faith you had by the visible works that flowed from your faith. And that's why he will be proved right in taking you to heaven. And the evidence then of those faithless works for those who have not believed in Jesus. Now, let me close this and let me kind of invite us to apply this with two different word pictures, okay? And here's the first one. The first one happened a number of years ago when one of our sons, at his young age, threw a baseball, through a window of one of the church buildings. Well, when Dad came home, when the door opened and the footsteps of Dad went into that house, there was and the child ran upstairs and hid under his bed. That's story number one. Story number two, word picture number two is this. It happened on August 26th. It was a special day for one person in the household because it was Grandma's birthday, and a couple of the grandkids had talked their mom into coming over and secretly sneaking into the house, putting up all kinds of birthday pictures and happy birthday things, and then wait and hide until Grandma came home. And the minute she came into the house, what do you think they did? They didn't run and hide. They jumped out and said, "Surprise!" And they said, "Welcome home, happy birthday." Two stories of someone coming and two different responses. What will be our response when Jesus comes again? For those who do not believe in Jesus, it will be run and try to hide. It will be run and try to hide. Because the guilt of the wrong will be ever so evident, and there is nothing and no way to hide it. But for those who believe in Jesus and what He has done in separating their sins as far as the east is the west from them, those who believe in Jesus, that He has edited a video of their life, removing all of their wrong and only showing the evidence of their faith that He gave them in the first place, there will be a welcome home, welcome back to a Jesus who says, "Now you, welcome home to heaven with me." This is the word of the Lord for us.